Hello, everybody, and welcome to Renee Live. I'm really excited to be here this evening. My guest today is Master Astrologer and Psychic Intuitive Ray Sette. And Ray's been on several times before in the show, and I just love having him on. And, we're kind of like soul tribe, and we have a lot to talk about tonight, including about, the planetary lineup and the full moon and what he's predicting. But then we're also going to throw in some of what we hear from spirit. And this would be in regard to what is going on currently around the world. And some of this might be hard for some people to understand, or maybe you don't want to understand. Maybe you want to sit there and laugh, and it's all good. Everybody's perception is going to be different. Everybody who receives this information tonight is going to receive it possibly differently. And we're okay with that. But I want people to understand that when we talk on the show tonight, we are not coming from a place of ego. We are coming from a place of soul, a place of spirit. We are coming as our soul selves. Ego plays no role within our lives. And so when we release ego, you're able to see things even more clearly. And it's more of a true perception and reception of what's going on, because we don't have that ego mindset coming in. We're going from total soul consciousness. So please understand the show might not be for everybody tonight. We're going to do it anyway. So welcome, Ray.
Thank you. Good evening, Renee. So happy to be with you. We've been trying to do this for quite a while now, so I'm glad that it finally came together. And I always say that it always happens at the most perfect time.
I agree. And what I find really interesting, Ray, is that we're in Mercury retrograde, and maybe I shouldn't say it so loud, but we are, and it's all good because we're here and we're connecting, and Spirit's got our back on this.
Absolutely. And I always express that even a Mercury retrograde serves a greater purpose. The planetary alignments aren't designed to hinder our lives. They're really presenting us with opportunities so that we can craft with the universe all that we desire and our lives. None of this is intended to disrupt our lives. When
Right.
we understand how to work with the Mercury retrograde energies, then we counteract any potential disruptions. It's when we're working against the energy, that's when we encounter the difficulties. If we approach a Mercury retrograde with concerns, hesitations, fears, doubts, then you're just throwing a monkey wrench into the situation. I've actually had experiences, and I believe it was 2 years ago. Once a year in October, I traveled to Minnesota. And I believe it was 2 years ago, I actually traveled during a Mercury retrograde. Let me also add that all my travel plans were secured and established prior and outside of a Mercury retrograde. I traveled during a Mercury retrograde. Both my flights going and returning were about 45 minutes, a half hour to a 45 minutes early during the Mercury retrograde, and everything came together perfectly. That's because I had no concern. I mean, I allotted myself, regardless of whether it's a Mercury retrograde or not, wherever it is that I am to be, I'm notoriously early. So regardless of that, I allocated more than enough time, as I always do when I'm traveling. However, everything came together perfectly because I really had no concerns. I really had no concerns that there would be any sort of disruption. And if there was a bit of a hiccup, I knew it was going to be okay.
Right.
I knew it was going to be okay. So when we work with these energies, I understand all the planetary alignments, all the signs, all the planets, they have great potential. When we understand how to work with the energy, then we counteract anything negative. Each sign, each planet has a low vibration and a high vibrational potential. Not bad or good, just different vibrational frequencies, just like the colors of a rainbow. The red has a low vibration, the violet has a high vibration. Whatever it is, that we are tapping into and where we're directing our attention, what facet of that outcome, of that potential that we're energizing, that's what we will bring to form. You see,
Yep.
many times, I hope I'm not talking too much, Renee.
No, you're fine. Please.
I can
I
sometimes,
want people to understand this because it's very important for people to understand, because I can type it on Facebook
yeah,
or any of the other social networking platforms and, till I'm blue in the face. But people need to sometimes hear instead of just see
sure.
for comprehension.
Renee, astrology is such a vast subject. I first began studying astrology, I always say back in the days when the dinosaurs walked the earth, in 1985. I
Hmm.
began learning on my own, and once I began studying with an instructor, actually I studied with several instructors, that's when it really all started coming together for me. And I always emphasize I'm conventionally trained as an astrologer. However, all these years of reviewing of countless amounts of charts, I've actually allowed myself to really arrive at my own understanding of how all of this works. I don't discredit, any of the sages from the past. However, I've allowed myself to really embrace my own unique understanding of
Hmm.
all of this. And unfortunately, many have a misunderstanding of how astrology really works. Whenever I share my forecast, I always emphasize that, unless you're looking to see how something like, for example, a full moon is placed in conjunction with an individual's personal astrological chart, you're really not going to understand how it's going to possibly all unfold for you. And when I share my forecast, I always emphasize that this, it's more than just a general, but it's just a point of reference for an individual to work with the energies. But unless you're looking to see how an alignment is specifically placed in someone's individual chart, that's the only way you can have a greater idea and understanding as to how those energies may possibly unfold for you. I remember a long time ago, it was probably when I first published my book, one of the tabloid magazines actually wanted me to write a horoscope column for them. And I was like, thank you, but no thank you, because, in my book, I'm expressing how unique all of this is. And,
Hmm.
those horoscopes, and I'm not discrediting any of that, they're very general, and it's only suggesting that there are really just 12 types of personalities and 30 million people are going to have the exact same experience. Many don't understand how unique an astrological composition is to an individual. It's just as unique as a fingerprint. Even with twins, because they're not born at the exact same moment, there will be differences, albeit they may be subtle differences, but there are differences in the charts nonetheless.
Yeah, see, that's so interesting because people don't understand. I mean, some people blow off astrology and some people really um, embrace themselves and embrace what it is to say. And one of the things, I mean, when we talk about astrology too, everybody's doing their daily forecast, in the newspapers, or they got the app. And, so like say I'm an Aries, right?
Mhm.
Um, it only focuses on the Aries aspect. It doesn't focus on, we each have more than one sign to us.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
and so that's something maybe you could explain to people, that those are going to be far-fetched unless
Sure.
you manifest them.
You know, in an astrological chart, all the signs and all the planets are present. Most are familiar with a sun sign. But, when you look at a chart, the first elements that you review are the sun sign, the rising sign, and the moon sign.
Hmm.
Those are the three major components that will give an indication of an individual's personality, if you will. My suggestion, if you're going to read a horoscope, read your rising sign. That might be a little bit more accurate than a sun sign for you. And again, I do suggest just to embrace it all with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I feel sort of the same way with it. I used to follow them when I was younger. I mean, older, and and I've gotten to the point where it's like I haven't even looked at them. I think probably in years, like
Now,
years, because they just didn't. They weren't anything
yeah, they didn't resonate with you.
associated. Yeah, they didn't resonate at all with me.
They didn't resonate with you. You know, and as I said, the astrological composition is so extraordinarily unique to an individual, which is based upon the your birth date, the
Hmm.
exact time that you were born, which is critical, as well as the geographical location on the planet. Those three elements are what constructs the astrological configuration for an individual. The time of birth is critical. You know,
Hmm.
and even like I said, even with twins, because they're not born at the same time, even if it's a few minutes apart, there's
Right.
still differences. They may be subtle differences, but sometimes those subtle differences can have a great impact on an individual's life.
Yep. Nope. I totally agree.
So,
So we're currently in the full moon, the phasing out of it, really, but still
yeah,
strong energies.
yeah,
And six planetary, is it six retrogrades right now?
correct. Five or six, yes. You know, the outer planets are more connected with what's going on, like generationally and globally. The inner planets, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, are more what's referred to as the personal planets. Right now, Mercury and Venus are retrograde, in addition to Uranus. I should know this off the top of my head, Neptune and Pluto, but it may be Saturn. You know, but I would address more so the personal planets. Like, for example, we're in a Mercury retrograde now. Mercury retrograde at this time is retrograde in the sign of Virgo, which is one of the signs that Mercury rules. Each sign is ruled by a planet. Gemini and Virgo are both ruled by Mercury. Now, what I suggest to recognize specifically during this Mercury retrograde, let me backtrack a little bit. During any Mercury retrograde, I always emphasize that we embrace the RE words. For example, we reconnect with those that we have lost touch with. We remember things from the past. If you're working on the manuscript, you rewrite the manuscript during a Mercury retrograde. You reinstall an operating system in your computer. You see how that works there?
Right.
That's how you work with the Mercury retrograde energies. Now, that doesn't mean that there may not necessarily be disruptions. Again, it's based upon what we're projecting out there. Now, this Mercury retrograde is in the sign of Virgo. And what I emphasize for everyone during this time is to remember the power of the mind. You see,
Mhm.
Mercury is the element that represents the mind. And with that, I will add that the mind is not specific to the organ of the brain. The mind exists in every cell of the body. And this is one facet of our human potential that we employ to create our realities. So during this time, I suggest to everyone to perhaps explore maybe some reading material to inspire you to recognize the power of your mind. You see how that works there? Now, we
Mhm.
also have Venus retrograde, and Venus is retrograde in the sign of Leo. With that experience, I suggest that we're being inspired to remember the power of love. You see, Leo is the sign which most represents love. Many of us associate Venus with love, but astrologically, every sign and every planet has a representation, has dominion over a certain facet of our human experiences. The sign Leo represents love. It also represents creativity. It represents divinity, among many things. So this Venus retrograde, which Venus goes retrograde about every 18, 19 months. This Venus retrograde is an opportunity to remember the power of love and to not underestimate that. And certainly every one of us on this planet, especially at this time right now, are being inspired to remember the power of love. The alignments in the last 3 or 4 months
Mhm.
have been extraordinary in terms of remembering that element about of our human potential and how extraordinary the possibilities of that dynamic are for everyone, especially in terms of how we're co-creating our new world. You see?
Yep. And that's important is, to remember that, we are love. We come from a place of love, and that's what we're all about. And people forget that when you step into that ego state of mind and
Absolutely.
ego state of living. And, you can't stress it enough. I mean, especially now with all this division going on, that
Sure.
we need to come back to our soul selves and say, it doesn't matter. Everything has to be unconditional. Like, um, if somebody's having an issue, are you going to, step aside and not help that person with, a solution? Or, you're going to say it's not my business? No, you try. If somebody's asking for help, you're going to help them. I
Of
would
course.
hope that you would help them, and find that space or that time to be able to do so. uh,
Absolutely.
we need to go back to our soul selves, our root selves, and that is love.
Absolutely. It was about 10 years ago, and specific to the planetary alignments to the astrological chart of the United States. It was about 10 years ago, and it was contending with a Pluto cycle of experience, that every individual was being inspired to really remember their power. And again, it's not from a place of ego. I
Hmm.
always suggest to embrace your personal power from a place of love and humility, but not ego and greed. You see, when we
Correct.
embrace it from a place of love, it's unconditional, and we are free to generate unconditionally that love to all of humanity and all of creation. When it's conducted from a place of ego, then perhaps it's potentially selfish and it's not necessarily serving a greater purpose. But
Right.
also, when we are able to remember that power of divinity, of that creative potential that every one of us has the opportunity to tap into, then we become the master of our destiny, and no one has any control over us. You see, a bigger picture in all of this is that we are breaking away from that which has suppressed humanity for a multitude of years. We're coming into our own power. However, those which have suppressed us don't want to relinquish their power quite easily.
That's very true. That's very true. Ray, let's talk about your full moon horoscope.
Hmm. Well,
So
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, we had our full moon on August 30th, and it was actually the second full moon in August, which it's referred to as a blue moon. Now, personally, you know, I don't necessarily give much weight to, like a blue moon. I think that's more of like something that's, it's like a buzzword that it just to kind of get everybody just to kind of like, I don't know, I say stirred up or anything, but when we look at these cycles, they're not necessarily connected to the calendar that we conventionally use. The calendar was something that was created by humanity as, and this is just my opinion, it's almost like it's a way for us to just kind of remove ourselves from working with the actual cycles of nature. We look everything, especially astrologically, everything is cyclical. Just look at the cycles of nature, the cycles of the season. Everything is cyclical. When we observe all things astrologically, we'll look at the planetary cycles, which not necessarily are in alignment with the Julian calendar. Perfect example is leap year. Every 4 years, miraculously, another day is created. However, this the sun will passage that 360-degree circle regardless of how many physical days are in the calendar. So that being said, we did have a second full moon in the calendar month of August, which this full moon, it was in the sign of Pisces, and it was in somewhat of the early degree of Pisces. The Pisces element, because it represents that which is hidden, the subconscious, it's an opportunity to really look deep within yourselves and to shine the light, because a full moon always shines a light on where there may be some darkness in your lives. And sometimes, that takes some courage. It also very much stimulates our intuitiveness and psychic faculties, which every one of us has the opportunity to really employ. It doesn't mean that we're out we're intended to, go out and do psychic readings or set up on stand on the boardwalk next to Madame Marie. It's so that we can recognize how spirit is guiding us.
Right.
You know, whenever I whenever I conduct an event, I always emphasize that, and I'm referring to a psychic gallery event. I always touch upon how I don't necessarily observe what I demonstrate to be a gift. I don't believe that I have a gift. I believe and understand that I have an ability that every one of us has the opportunity to work with so we can recognize how spirit is guiding us.
Right.
And I always use the analogy that we all have 10 fingers and 10 toes. However, we're not Olympic swimmers like Michael Phelps. We can all swim, but we're not to the caliber of an Olympic swimmer. We are all intuitive. We all have this ability to really connect with spirit and employ that intuitiveness, those psychic faculties, so that we can recognize how spirit is guiding us. You see how that works there? In this full moon, because a full moon amplifies and energizes, brings to light. It's an opportunity to really recognize your own intuitiveness, but also to look deep within yourself, to recognize what you may need to release that no longer serves a purpose for us.
Correct. Correct. And that's something that people, need to really put more trust in that. But I feel that trust is waning in people in general, even within themselves. And I think that's because of the outside forces that it's happening. And this is why we are in the situation that we are globally, not just in the United States, but globally. The exact same thing is happening at the exact same time. Is this normal? No. Is this a normal cycle? They're trying to make it that way.
Sure.
But when you talk about normal cycles, like currently right now, we're in a what is it? A solar grand minimum, which is like a mini ice age, which makes, the winters longer. Doesn't mean that it's going to be like, thick layers of ice all over the place, but it'll be cooler, more damp. Summers will be shorter and a little bit cooler in most places, except for the southern states. And this goes on for several years. You talk about cycles. It's a cycle, just Earth itself goes through a cycle just like we do, just like the sun does, our solar system, the universe. Everything is on a cycle. And yet they know this and they're pushing climate change. And it is a climate change because the earth and the sun are going through its normal cycle of every how many years. We're not going through this. I can't trust the science anymore, Ray. I'm going to be honest with you, with everything that's gone on. And they say trust the science, and I don't.
No, that, at the moment that they tell you to trust something, I think that's an indication, we can't trust that.
I know, but I look at it and, trust the science on it. Well, geez, back in second grade, science tells me that the earth and the sun go through these different cycles, and every so many years we're going to go through this. Does it mean that we have contributed to maybe some of the stuff through whatever, would it be automotive, cows farting, excuse me, but that's all natural. Humans expel gas more than a cow does.
Yeah. I think that's just a way of manipulating and just inflicting the propaganda to fortify, their intentions and their way of just maintaining their control and keeping everyone in fear and to keep everyone in fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's fear is very debilitating, and it allows us, and I will also say, if we allow it to, cause someone to have that power over us. You see, everything is about just inflicting fear. It's all about fear. The more fear that they can cast out into the world, they keep us in a compromised state of our well-being. They never talk about our power. We're not inspired to really recognize our power. We're always taught that something else, whether it's God or whatever it might be, has power over us. We're not inspired to recognize the power that we have within ourselves. And quite honestly, we're, our physical form has been kept in a compromised state of really tapping into its potential because of the foods, or rather, I should say, the food-like substances that are put out there through medications. fluoride, all these other horrific elements that interfere with specifically our intuitiveness. The
Yep.
fluoride is designed to calcify the pineal gland. With that, that's the third eye. That's really the connection with the higher, or impart the connection with the higher self, and strengthens our intuitiveness. They don't want us to recognize our power. And part of this time as well has been for everyone to remember their personal power, not to inflict that power upon another, because then what that would just not would just
That's
defeat the
ego.
purpose. That's ego. That's ego. When we embrace that power from a place of love and humility, then we become creators and co-creators of our realities. But also,
Right.
to, we can't blame something else for what takes place in our lives. It's about being accountable and responsible for all that we set in motion through our thoughts, actions, intentions, and words.
Yep. Nope. You're correct. And and this is what it is. Our thoughts create things. What we think comes out. And I feel more it's when it's put to emotion.
See, the emotions, the passion, if you will, that is the fire that really fuels the creative process. You see, one of the things that I understand through observing an astrological composition, the moon element represents many things in a chart. It represents our emotions, our home environments, our mothers, the relationship we have with females. It also indicates, as I understand it, gives an idea as to what it is that we are very passionate about in this life, which I also observe that it connects us with a greater purpose. If we could allow ourselves, which 3 years ago with the eclipse cycles that took place in 2020, part of that experience was offering everyone the opportunity to really recognize what it is that they're passionate about in their lives, which, as I understand it, equals a greater purpose. Whenever we're so very intensely passionate about something, that so vigorously fuels the creative process and brings to form many of our desires. You see,
Correct.
we as I said, a few years ago, every one of us were being offered the opportunity to really recognize a greater purpose. Unfortunately, we have unnecessary beliefs that something that if we follow our path or we follow what it is we desire, we're not going to be able to sustain ourselves. And that's really just a belief. It's just a belief system. When I first embarked upon this most extraordinary unconventional journey, which actually the beginning of September, this time now, for me, marks 18 years that I've been on this path on a full-time basis. And and it's not to say that it was easy, and there were challenges, which I will also add that most, if not all of those challenges, were really created through fear. I created them myself. But what I emphasize is that when I arrived at a place of knowing, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that this is the path that I was intended to follow based on my choices prior to coming into this human form, there were no other options. Failure was never an option, and there was never a plan B. And I really had no idea how I was going to support or sustain myself. And I trusted. I just knew that I needed to follow this path. And it took me about 3 years, actually, because I talk about how it was on September 12th of 2001. I was on the phone with the woman who at the time was my personal astrologer and a very close friend and confidant. And we were just talking about what was occurring astrologically that brought to form all the horrors that we had experienced. And it was in that moment that within myself, I decided that I had that ambition to just pursue something where I could just bring a little bit of light into other people's lives, to help bring some sense into sometimes experiences that make no sense whatsoever. And it took me 3 years, and it was in early September of 2005 when I made the decision and I embarked upon that leap of faith. And I will add to that. I really had no idea what was going to come next, how I was going to sustain myself. I just trusted. I just trusted the process. You see, and the trust is such an important element, especially when we are on this most unconventional path. You know, because we see things that are sometimes so convoluted and abstract that we have to just trust whatever it is that we are observing, and also just know that in some sort of way we may bring some light into other people's lives. You know, a long time ago when I first began like sharing my forecast, I always felt I needed to be right with whatever it is that I was predicting. You know, and much of that came from negative influences from someone that I was working with at the time, who was just kind of reviewing some of my writings. You know, and then I realized I arrived at a point where, you know what, I'm really not concerned about being right. I more desire to be inspirational. So whenever I share and create these forecasts, if you will, which I always honor, really come through me from a higher place. I'm just the vessel. I'm just the one, you know, channeling and transferring this information. I don't create what I share with the intention to be right. I bring all this to form so I can inspire another one to perhaps recognize something within themselves
Mhm.
that they may not necessarily observe. It's more about being inspirational. I really, I really have very little concern about being right, because also too, you know, the trust element. We talked about trust. You know, when you're looking ahead, there's really no way of knowing with certainty what's going to happen, and it's about trust. It's about absolute trust. Like, for example, whenever I conduct a gallery event with a group of individuals, I have no idea how the experience will unfold. And I tell you, right before I step out into that arena, it's probably one of the most terrifying experiences I
Oh,
have.
I'm sure, no doubt,
No
right?
idea. I have no idea how it's going to unfold. And I have to trust whatever spirit is showing me, which there's no way of scripting any of this. There's no way of doing any research ahead of time. You just blindly go into this experience and be in a place of absolute trust that
Correct.
what spirit is showing me, even though sometimes it doesn't make sense, at some point it will come together for an individual. If we could just allow ourselves to be at that place of trust, even just a little bit, it's what's that saying that goes, if one has the faith the size of a mustard seed, an individual could say to the mountain, move, and it'll move. Spirit just requires just a little bit of trust. You know,
Funny
imagine.
that you should mention the mustard seed because I don't know, it was about a year ago, maybe a little bit longer. My girlfriend had lost her husband, and and her she had this mustard seed bracelet that she had given to her
Is that something?
his to his daughter. And then we were talking, and one day I heard something about a mustard seed. Like while we were on the phone, my Alexa started talking about the mustard seed. And I said, so I said to her, I said, you know what? I said, you know, out of the clear blue sky, I said, it's talking about the mustard seed. What does the mustard seed resonate to you? And, you know, it had to do with her grandmother and her mom, and, you know, and this mustard seed given to her, this bracelet and everything else. So then not even a week later, I received a mustard seed necklace.
Isn't that
So,
something?
but he had come through about the mustard seed to remind her, you
Yeah,
know, that because out of the clear blue sky, my Alexa started, you know, and the mustard seed is a very important. I'm like talking to her on the phone, and I'm like looking at my, and it's like, you know, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I did, but I
not at
mean,
all. No, not
you
at all.
know, I had to share that story of the mustard seed
Sure.
because it does have a lot of significant meaning, and if you know the meaning behind the mustard seed, really it's like the smallest little one of the smallest little seeds
Yeah,
can make so much and do so
absolutely.
much.
Absolutely. You know, and I've been saying for years, we are living in extraordinary biblical times. And every one of us is being offered the opportunity to really recognize how we are creative beings. You know, we come from source, we come from creativity. We're creative beings, and I always emphasize, you know, whenever, you know, I've noticed that quite often when I speak to someone about their creativity, you know, they think about art and music. Creativity is multifaceted. It's not specific to art and music. Creativity is multifaceted. It's multidimensional. We are creative beings. You see, you know, and we're all being inspired to recognize how we bring to form so much in our lives. It's when we're not understanding the creative process, which basically is thought, word, and deed. That's when what I refer to as miscreate. We bring to form a less than favorable outcome to any situation, and we're so being inspired. You know, again, just so that we can direct the course of our lives and what is unfolding for us.
Correct. My battery's going low. This is Mercury retrograde. When we talk about the different influences and stuff like that, you know, if we stay within our soul self and not in our ego self, which is what the negative forces wish for us to stay in, because that's when the fear kicks in and everything else. Just like if you want to manifest something, you put your emotion into it. If you want to talk about something, you can talk about it, but as long as you don't have that emotion behind it, it's all good. You know, and that's the one thing I tell people about manifestation. I believe, for me, and I've seen it happen that way, where I can control my emotions and not manifest what I don't want because I'm not putting my emotion behind it.
Absolutely.
You know, so all these people are like, you know, you have to be positive. I was talking to my girlfriend about it yesterday. You have to be positive and don't think of anything negative because you don't want to draw it in. Well, here's the difference. I can control my emotion. Can you control your emotions?
Yeah.
Because I can sit here and talk to you till I'm blue in the face without any emotion behind it in regard to what's going on around us. And I'm not going to manifest that. It's already happening. But I can put emotion behind it and manifest what I don't want by putting that, because even if it's anger, even if it's, you know, anything like that, the universe doesn't know the difference between happy, sad, angry. Whatever emotion you're putting behind what you say is what the universe is going to give you.
Of course, absolutely. You know, and I also talk about how, you know, if there is like a fear or concern there, honor that. Honor it and acknowledge it. Just don't give it power.
Right.
Honor it, acknowledge it, release it, and rise above. You know, we don't want to deny when we're having an experience or even a discordant emotion, because many times when sometimes when it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about the Pisces element, which it's connected to the 12th house in an astrological chart. That's the subconscious. That's all that's hidden. That's everything that operates behind the scenes. Many times when I observe that the 12th house is being energized and activated for an individual, I suggest for them to recognize that, you know, past emotions, discordant emotions, past memories that might be less than loving are going to come to the surface. And they're doing so, they're being so rather, so that they can be released. When you have the experience, honor what is occurring, honor what is coming to the surface, observe it from a place of detachment, recognize that it's being released, and let it go. You know, many times someone has those experiences and they begin denying what is being purged, which again, it just goes back to working against the energy. You honor those feelings. You always honor the feelings, honor the challenges, honor the concerns, whatever that might be, and then choose to rise above them by knowing your power.
Exactly. And again, it's, you know, emotion plays a big part of it. You know, and I used to be, years ago, I used to be drama. I used to, you know, be so negative and stuff like that. I literally had to step out of myself, step aside, and like break contact with a lot of people, including my mom, which made me very heartbroken. And it still breaks my heart to this, you know, with her not being here, that I had to do that in order to gain my own strength and gain my own power into who I was and where I wanted to be and what I wanted to accomplish. because it was just a constant cycle. And so when I learned that and I broke free of it and was able to control my emotion. Now, not saying that if I see something happy, I might cry. If I see something sad, I might cry. That's something totally different. I'm talking about myself as a whole, to be able to control that emotion and to manipulate my own thoughts
Absolutely.
where I need them to be. And like I said, I can talk to you forever about what's going on in this world, but if I don't put emotion behind it, I'm not manifesting it.
You know, I've always suggested to observe all things, especially what is occurring in our world, from a place of detachment, so that you can remove yourself emotionally from what is occurring. And that also allows us to see and observe with greater clarity the
Mm-hmm.
bigger picture of what is occurring. You know, I've been saying for a multitude of years, what's happening right now has nothing to do with politics. There's absolutely nothing to do with politics. It's not
Nope.
about politics. That's all part of the programming that's hypnotized everyone to believing and just kind of like being in a place of negative emotion and pitting everyone against each other because it's all about politics. And it's not. So what's happening is more on a universal spiritual level, and it's biblical what's occurring right now. And you know, I'm not diminishing anyone's experiences, but most aren't. Or it's hard to say. I don't know if I want to say majority or whatever it might be. I mean, because we can't always fully assess like a percentage of how many individuals are acknowledging what is occurring or what it was not. But I believe more are embracing what we've been sharing for many years. You know, and we've also, myself as well as you've been condemned for offering these insights which deviate from the programming and the propaganda of the narrative. But what I'm emphasizing is that when we allow ourselves to really just detach from the outcome, whatever that might be, then we are able to see things with great clarity. It's kind of like when I'm working with a client. In order for me to assess the situation and what I observe, whether it be astrologically or psychically, I need to be in a place of detachment so that I can assess it all unconditionally.
Correctly.
And trust that whatever it is I share will bring some information or rather insights and inspiration to the individual. It's the same thing with what's going on in the world. If we can remove ourselves from that ego, from believing, who is the right person or whoever might that be, and just allowing spirit to show us the bigger picture, it all comes together for us. We just have
Correct.
to choose to see it from a place of love and not ego.
Yep. And I always say they have to, universal law says they have to let us know what's going on. They have to tell us ahead of time.
And they do.
What is going, and they do throughout TV shows and different things that are going on.
It's all disclosed.
Exactly. And so, I find it funny that people are like, how did the Simpsons know, or anything like that? They're letting us know. And there are times too that, people are like us, Ray, that, are gonna, try to throw the future in there. I mean, I did a time travel 4 or 5 years ago. I think it was like 4 years ago. I did a time travel through hypnosis and went into the future. And it was really interesting because I foresaw a lot of this, and I have video of it. The timing is off on some of it because the matrix has been played with.
Yeah.
And so things are happening a lot quicker than originally seen 5 years ago. But
Yeah.
right down to the laser, and the weather manipulation and different things that are coming down the pipe. It's like amazing. So anyway, when when we I totally lost track of what I was gonna say.
Just
Oh my
one thing
gosh.
I add to that is whenever I always emphasize also too that whenever we look to the future, when we ever look ahead, nothing is absolute, nothing is written in stone, nothing is guaranteed. We see the possible and the probable outcome. In any alignment astrologically, there can be many outcomes to that situation. It's whatever it is we are energizing in those alignments is what we will bring to form. And this is
Exactly.
where we can't emphasize enough the importance of recognizing and really being in that place of love. So that's what we're amplifying to the all of creation, love.
Correct.
Absolute love.
So when you talk about biblical times, this is what I was getting at. They have to let us know everything in advance. They have to. That's universal law. And
Yeah.
I don't care if they're reptilians. I don't care,
Yeah.
if they're hybrid. I don't care
Yeah.
who they are. But they have to universally let us know what's going on. So you need to pay attention, because this is what happens. So when we talk about that, and we talk about biblical times, and you talk about the apocalypse is not all doom and gloom like everybody perceives.
Absolutely not.
Apocalypse means what, Ray? You've said it several times.
Revelations and apocalypse means to reveal, to disclose. It has nothing to do with doom and gloom. The indoctrinations would have us believe it has to do with doom, gloom, and destruction to keep us all in a place of fear. It's, in essence, in simple terms, all the atrocities that have been inflicted upon humanity are being fully revealed and disclosed. And just like you said, you know what? The underworld, the shadow forces, they understand they need to operate within the parameters of universal law.
And they know that, yeah.
They reveal their evil intentions, and they do so in ways that seem humorous, so that we can concede to those plots, because they know they can't override our free will. They know
Correct.
by universal law that, and something else I've always been saying, that no matter how dark, malevolent, negative something is, even to the level of a demon, it has no power over us if we don't allow it.
Correct.
It's the same way with what's going on with the shadow forces in the outside world. I always use the example that, can you remember, I believe it was I think it was in 2003. Remember when Hulu first came out, the Hulu ads? Do you remember those ads?
Mm-hmm.
Part of the tagline of those ads was that, by watching Hulu, it turns brain matter into goo matter.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that. And they were telling you exactly what they were doing.
Yep.
They were turning your brain to mush.
I have not had TV here at home. I don't even have a TV that's hooked up in the house. And I have a smart one, but I choose not to hook it up. It's still been in the box for 3 years because somebody has, had bad luck with them being around her. And so I've chosen not to hook up this one. But I have not had cable in 7 years.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the last time I had cable service.
It is the best thing ever. I'll watch a movie if I want to watch a movie. Mm-hmm. But most of all, I have Sirius XM, and I love that. I love Sirius, and you can finagle with the prices and stuff.
Sure.
And so I pay really cheap compared to my son for what he pays, and I get more because you talk with them and you work with the people a little bit. But I will play my Sirius wherever I go, and and just listen to music, and a lot of times I'm listening to 70s music more than anything, because that's what we grew up with, Ray.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and you know what? And it just, the music of that time was so much more organic, than it is now. It's so contrived, and synthetic and digital now.
Yeah.
So I still have old LPs. I've been saying for years, I want to get a record player so I can listen to the old LPs the way that I once did.
Yeah, because now they don't sound like that, anything like when we grew up.
No.
They don't sound anything.
No.
Ours had a little static in the background, and
yeah.
And the speakers weren't, but now they're like all smooth sailing, but I do. I'll listen to the 70s, sometimes the 60s, 70s. I can remember like going to the Y, and Mom taking us on a Saturday and doing swimming and arts and crafts and everything.
Yeah, that's right. Saturday mornings at the Y.
Yeah. It's somebody's songs playing on a Saturday, and then going to gymnastics and looking like a bull in a china store and having everybody laugh. But then we went to the grocery store, and we got groceries, and Mom opened up the bags, and there's the fresh sliced Italian bread, and she threw some of the ham and capicola and sliced cheese on it, and we'd eat out the back of the car until we went on to our next thing, and always that 70s music.
Part of what we've lost is that sense of community, and I think it's also by malevolent design that
Yes.
those shadow forces have divided, especially the families. I remember growing up, my family, we were such a close-knit community. Across the street, I had my great aunt, I had cousins. Down the
Mm,
road, I had more family. We were
yes.
all, and we're always together in everybody's
Yes.
house.
Yes.
We've lost that sense of
We
community.
have.
We understand that in places in the higher realms or in certain star systems, they have tribes, they have communities. When we're in such close connection with one another, we support each other. If someone needs something, you don't have to worry about if you don't have enough money to take care of it.
Hmm.
Everyone watches out for everyone else. We have each other's
Hmm.
back. We've been so divided and taken away from all of that. We are inspired to really return to that sense of community that we
Hmm.
have so forgotten about.
We
Especially,
have, and it was so amazing. I mean, the times growing up, it was just so amazing having grandparents around and having
yeah,
cousins around, and they were
yeah,
your friends. They were your best
yeah,
friends growing up, and you had to be creative. We grew up in the country, and it was all our neighbors were all our cousins and stuff,
yep,
and
yeah,
and where we were playing in the woods, sliding down the ravines and on our butts, going through how many changes of clothes and pairs of sneakers and crawling through culverts and building forts out of garbage bags and you know what I mean, and like teepees and I mean, you just picking up what people down south call crawdads out of the creek and and little minnows, and I mean, just being in that type of an environment in the Adirondacks alone was, you did it with your cousins, you did it with your family.
yeah, yeah. Renee, there's back in those times, there's an innocence that's been lost, Renee.
Yes.
And I do believe it really began to fully diminish after September 11th of 2001, and it's all by design. It's all by
Mm-hmm.
and we're so inspired to really return, and it's not to discredit, the accomplishments or progress or any of that. But we understand that the fall of civilizations took place like in Lemurian Atlantis because they became so overwhelmed by their technology. This AI thing that's going on is very disturbing and very, very
Yes.
unsettling. And
Yes.
I'm saying we've been walking a very, very fine line, especially here in the United States. We're
Correct.
giving away so much of our power to these devices is
Correct.
very unsettling. And I am hopeful for the more benevolent outcome. But between now and especially the spring time frame of 2024, and that's because on April 8th of 2024, we have what's referred to as the next Great American Eclipse. Now, if you remember, on August 21st of 2017, that was the first Great American Eclipse. Now, when you follow the path of the eclipse as they transit the United States, it creates an X. And I observe it, that's an X marks the spot.
Yep. I
So
say that all the time. Yep.
I've been saying for many years that the United States is really tapping into its potential of being the New Jerusalem, which has nothing to do with religion or conventional religion. Please understand that to anyone who's listening here. This is not about religion, indoctrinations, or anything like that. There is such a great potential that exists within this country that's being born, you know, and that's why so many of the dark forces have have set out to destroy this country, as well as diminishing the great potential of each one of us that each one of us has the ability to really tap into.
Correct.
I keep saying that, everyone forgets that the United States was designed by the founding founders to be a republic, not a democracy. And there's a big difference between the two.
Yeah.
Just look what it says in the Declaration of Independence, or the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah.
And to
One
the
republic.
republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible. They don't want us to be one nation under God and indivisible. You
Right.
see, in a republic, the power belongs to the people and no one else. See,
Correct.
this is part of why as I mentioned earlier, how in 2013, about 10 years ago, everyone was being offered the opportunity to know their power from that place of love. That power that needs to be included in the republic needs to be from a place of love and not ego, not
Correct.
ego. You see, and I'm keeping all of this very, very simple. But what I'm emphasizing is that especially between now and the spring time frame, we have to be very aware of no longer giving away our power to others, because we may completely lose that power and our freedom.
Correct. And this is one thing, I'm going to take my emotion out of this. But one thing that I find very, how do I put it? We gave our power away many years ago. I have a job, I have expectations, I am paid by my employer. The same with those people who are in charge of being our representatives. We hire them and we pay them. And if they're not doing the job that we need, why do we have to wait until state trooper? Why do we have to wait until the next term to vote them out? 3 strikes, you're out with any job. Sometimes you don't even get that, 3 strikes.
That's right.
And why do we give that power away? Why do we feel the need to say it's okay? Their term's coming up in another 3 years and another 2 years. In the meantime, they still have that power over making those decisions that are not for the highest good of all.
Of course not.
And earning this money and, for a part-time job, and that's what it is. They're part-time jobs that, they're earning how much money, and then when they're done, they're earning how much money.
Even more. It's staggering.
Right.
It's staggering.
And for a part-time job, I don't know of any place of employment where you work a part-time job where you have a retirement from that part-time job.
Sure.
You want to talk about flipping burgers and people, at least those people are getting down and dirty and earning honestly. We are in a place right now where we have given our power away to people who do not have the highest good of all and the interest for the highest good of all.
Yeah. And that's, as I said, it's about really taking back our power. It really began after September 11th, where in those years, we gave away our power in the name of national security. And 3 years ago, we gave away our power in the name of public health. It was all a way of the shadow forces inflicting the fear in the hearts of humanity. Because when someone is in a place of fear, an individual is easily manipulated and controlled.
Correct.
So what's that saying? I don't remember who it was. It was Jimi Hendrix or something that says how they fear love the most, because if we're in a place of love, they can't control us.
Correct.
That's why we're, in part, especially right now, being inspired to return to that place of love.
Correct.
All about love.
And I look at this and I say, I didn't get the C vaccine. I'm not going to get the C vaccine or any of them. I'm not keen on vaccines because intuitively, psychically, through spirit, I hear and I see what is being done. And so I had C in February of 2020, before it even came out, before they even closed things down, like a month before. Was it fun? No. But you know what? I've had 2 other cases of it that were from people who were vaccinated, and they were a lot less but I already had built up a good part of my immunity. Did I panic? So yeah, so when I went to that first COVID thing, Ray, um, I couldn't panic. I didn't have time to panic. I had Maya to take care of, and obviously look out for myself. So
Sure.
and it was the same for the other women that were in the kitchen, um, and it didn't cause an outbreak or anything like that. But we were pretty sick, and didn't know. So we all chose not to get the V,
Mhm.
and we did all fine, and we're all doing fine,
Isn't that
but
something?
it is something, and you talk about herd immunity, and my family is the same way. I couldn't stress enough that when you have something that is not tested properly for the use of humans, um, there's going to be repercussions. There are going to be repercussions, and we're seeing it now. And my family realizes that, I was thinking of their highest interest. On top of my mother coming through to me and saying, I don't want anybody in the family to get it because there's going to be problems a couple of years down the road. You're going to see heart problems. You're going to see people just dropping. There's going to be all sorts of issues with this, and we're seeing it.
And we're seeing it. Absolutely. The body, we're not here to tell anybody what they should or shouldn't do. That's not our place. We share what we know. And
Correct.
we strongly, emphatically encourage everyone to conduct exhaustive research where all of this is concerned. Talking about giving away your power. You know, I'm grateful that from a very young age I was exposed to really the understanding of how the body operates and how it was
Mhm.
designed to heal itself when it's properly supported to do its
Correct.
function. When we're putting these frankenfoods in our bodies and all these synthetic substances, the body isn't supported properly so to do its job.
Correct.
And no one talks about that, or I mean, it's there, but it's not as prevalent. The information there, but they don't. It's no different than how conventional religion has not inspired everyone to know their power. The medical profession doesn't want you to be healthy. It doesn't want you to know how to work with nature to support itself properly. Renee, the only time I can remember actually having an antibiotic put in my body was when I was 8 or 9 and I had to have my tonsils out, which if it was my choice, I wouldn't embark on
Hmm.
that choice. I don't even use aspirin. And quite honestly, I really don't get sick. And on those extremely rare experiences or moments where I may be symptomatic, which might be every few years, it's only because my body is run down and
Correct.
within 24 to 48 hours, I'm back to me again. It's because and I'm not perfect, believe me. I don't believe that I don't profess that I am perfect, that I know all about this, but I do know enough that I'm able to enjoy optimum health. You see, and every one of us has the opportunity to do that. It also requires being accountable and responsible for understanding how we create the physical form as well as disease.
Correct.
All disease, and it was Louise Hay, which many are familiar with her book, You Can Heal Your Life, really talk about the origins of disease and how it all stems from discordant emotions and quite
Hmm.
honestly, not being in a place of love.
Correct.
See, and we never discredit someone's challenges, especially regarding compromised health and wellness. However, we do inspire you to recognize the power of your being and to understand how the body was designed to really heal itself and shield itself from negative interferences physically as well as etherically. We have this energy field around us that
Hmm.
has been put in place to shield ourselves against negative etheric energies. We're not understood. We're not properly informed how to work with all of this. And
Right.
all of this is coming to surface, and it's amazing how they are trying so hard to keep us from seeing all of this. I shared a video recently, and I think you saw it, about a doctor who really talked about how this whole thing regarding that situation really began in the mid 1960s. So
Yes.
honestly, all these uh, uh, I don't want to use the word because all these substances that are being put in our bodies, they have been tested, and they know exactly what it is that they are doing to humanity and how they are
Right.
destroying us.
Correct. You're right. They have been tested for not the purpose of what everybody is perceiving them to be done.
Or what they're
And
told they're for.
or what they're told that they're for. Um, and people cannot. This is where we talk about fear stepping in. We cannot let fear overtake this emotion. We cannot let fear overtake the emotion of. I'm in the middle of a show, honey. Okay. Again. Okay. Thank you. Why did you dying again? So, anyway, when we let fear become an emotion, and it is an emotion, but it's an enhancer, I think, of our regular emotions.
Of course.
Um, at that point, we can manifest more again about controlling emotions, the importance of controlling your emotions. When we allow our emotions to overtake our thought process, then we cannot see clearly, we cannot think clearly.
Of course. And
We are not thinking for ourselves.
it's why, in parts, so much of what occurs in the outside world is designed to stir up emotions and get everyone emotionally charged. Like that
Right.
experience which took place a few years ago with a certain individual from a certain city in Minnesota. It was all designed to stir up emotions. That
It
was,
was.
I remember when I watched that video, I said, that looks exactly like a stage orchestrated choreographed performance. It wasn't, as I understand it, it was a performance, and it was intentionally designed to stir up emotions and to once again pit everyone against each other.
And at the same time, the same day in the UK, they had the exact same scenario play through.
Hmm.
Um,
Is that interesting?
and 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 it was caught. People caught it, and then all of a sudden it disappeared, right?
That's right.
So
Interesting how they
so
just disappear.
right. And one of the things I want to touch on, okay, so fear has a feeling. Fear is an emotion. Our body has a feeling when we are in fear, and how it reacts and how it feels compared to intuition, compared to your gut feeling. The intuition, it's a totally separate body reaction as to what you need to do and what you need to follow. So
Absolutely.
when you have fear, you're in panic, it increases the adrenaline. You might shake, you might uh, become all sweaty, you might, have all these thoughts running through your head. Intuition will, you might feel a cold chill, but you're not going to be shaking. You're going to be calm. There's no adrenaline rush. It's a feeling, it's a knowing. It's totally different than feeling physically of fear. You might feel sick to your stomach, saying, that's just not right for me. Everybody has a little bit of a different reaction when it comes to intuition.
Sure.
But with fear, we're all pretty much the same.
Sure.
So it's being able to distinguish between the fear and the intuition of not doing something, of staying away from something, whether you do it or you don't. There's a distinction between the two. And that's what I want people to focus on. What are they actually feeling physically? What are they feeling mentally? What is the difference? And there is a difference, but many people um, blow it off.
Sure, of course, absolutely. The fear triggers that fight flight response,
Correct.
which we embark on something that is impulsive and not necessarily something that will really serve a greater or a higher purpose. You
Correct.
know, trusting that instincts, we have to be peaceful. Between peaceful, grounded with the energies of the earth, then that's what also fortifies just that knowing. You know.
Yes.
And there's no concern, there's no fear, there's trust. There's trust.
Correct.
And every one of us has the opportunity to have those experiences and to choose to not be in that place of fear. But it doesn't mean that every once in a while something might creep up. I mean, occasionally myself, I have those moments, but they're just moments. They're just
Hmm.
moments. But many times it comes from like an external influence of an outside source that is endeavoring to inflict that negative and that fear upon me. I know
Correct.
enough when that's occurring to just kind of regroup and reground myself and just kind of anchor myself and move past and not allow that fear, as I say, to interfere with my
Right.
wellness and my well.
Correct. Correct.
So
And
I
it's
need
very important, of course. When you take care of your body, you have to take care of your mind, your body, and your soul, your spirit. I mean,
a part of it.
that's all. That is all what's
Yeah,
really important, and that's what's really important is to be able to um, take care of it. And you say grounded, balanced, and focused. So important to be able to do that,
of course,
so that you can be aware, so that you can see clearly, so that you can hear clearly.
absolutely.
Um,
You need
and
a place of love.
that in itself is a place of love, coming from a
A
place of
place of
love.
love.
Yes.
Many have embarked upon those choices to subject themselves to those synthetic interferences because of fear. Because of
Hmm.
fear.
Hmm.
See, when we empower ourselves, when we're in our place of love, then nothing has power over us.
Correct.
And
I have. Go ahead, Ray. I'm
as,
sorry.
as I was saying earlier, between now and that spring time frame with that next great American eclipse, I cannot emphasize enough, and it goes back to what I was said earlier about the Mercury retrograde and the Venus retrograde, about
Hmm.
really arriving at that place of love within yourself and truly knowing that power of love before it becomes too late. I don't believe we'll get to the point where it's too late, but I'm not going to take that for granted. I won't take that.
Correct. Correct. Touching back on social media and TV and stuff like that. And I know that we use social media, Ray, as a platform to get out the message, to try to help people,
Sure.
not only just inspire them, but to help them to utilize that intuition, to utilize their own given abilities to be able to clear the muck out of the way and
Sure.
hopefully release
This place
hopefully
of
release
service.
ego.
Yeah.
Um, so here I'm going to touch on parties, like election parties, official parties. Um, a lot of people right now are going based on
Of
ego
course.
and what they know, and sticking to their egotistical way of thinking and selection,
Yeah.
um, and being staunch about it instead of coming from that place of love, coming from um, the higher self, using the intuition and stuff. And so a really close friend of mine, um, thought differently of me. And I'm like, my place comes from not a place of ego. It comes from a place of love. My decisions are given to me by spirit. Spirit is showing me, and it is my choice whether or not I choose to listen. And so this is going to take a little while. Oh, funny, this appeared suddenly. So take it down by the swing set, please. Excuse me, Ray. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So, um, so it comes from spirit. My information comes from spirit. I'm guided from spirit, and I see, and I hear, And that's taken ego out. That's totally taken ego out. So
Sure.
my girlfriend was the opposite and set in this way, and I'm like, okay, you are not following intuition. You are not following spirit. You're based on ego. And anybody who has, which she does have the abilities, like very strongly, who is ignoring them is not, you're stuck in ego. You're stuck in the human experience, not the soul experience. And you're seeing that division even between psychic mediums, where you could see where it's coming from a place of love and versus ego. And a lot of people are losing their abilities, are being taken away because they're not using them for the highest good. They're not listening, so they're taking them away. And I've seen that. So my girlfriend decided to take my advice. She got rid of TV,
For her.
cable.
For her.
She got she got off of social networking for a while because it was bothering her what she was seeing, and she was getting all worked up. And within a couple of months, she said to me, she said, "Oh my God. Oh my God." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Renee, I like actually see what you're saying now. I see what you and all these other like-minded people are saying. And I thought that they were just conspiracy theories. I thought that they were this." She goes, "Oh my God." She's like, "I feel like I need to apologize." And I said, "You don't need to apologize. It's okay." Because I could see it. I knew it. And it's your journey. It's your journey. But I cannot highly stress enough how wonderful life is without TV, without that programming.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and it doesn't phase me, Ray, because like we had the rabbit ear antennas growing up until like 84 when cable finally came. And then,
Well,
of
we
course,
had cable in 1980. I remember it was 1980 when it all came out. Yeah.
we lived way up on the hill in the country in the Adirondacks. And so to have cable, we had to fight for it. And it was like 83, maybe in 83. Until then, we were watching still Little House on the Prairie
Yeah.
and the Brady Bunch when we could get the rabbit ears to work or the
All
antenna on
right.
top of the
I
roof,
know.
right?
Get the right alignment.
Yeah, yeah. And turning the knob, what's that? Atari was the biggest thing. I think we
Oh,
got that in
Atari. Oh, good
81.
heavens. Oh,
I think
yes.
I think we got that
Space
in 81,
Invaders.
and we'd lay on the floor and playing tennis against our dad or doing Space Invaders or
Space
Pac-Man. And
Invaders. Yeah.
I mean, life was so different then. And so it's like to not have that TV again does not faze me. It brings me back to one of my favorite times in childhood and growing up. You know what I'm saying? And to be able to
Sure.
share that with her
Yeah.
is amazing. I mean, granted, she uses her tablet, she watches a lot of her preschool stuff. That kid can speak Spanish
Yeah. Yeah. I believe it.
without taking it in school.
I believe it. These platforms, they can serve a greater purpose if we don't allow ourselves to really be pulled into some very dark places. I said it. I tell you, Renee, I joined Facebook. I think it was in 2009, and I was resistant, and I didn't know why back in those days. I really didn't I really didn't want to go on those social platforms. I didn't want any of that. And I
Correct.
was told, "Oh, you need to be on Facebook. You need to be on Facebook." I mean, I succumbed to it. But I've been saying for years that the individual who created those platforms, that's not who created them. That's not who
Mhm.
created them. These platforms were created by something much more dark and sinister than most
Yes.
people will allow themselves to really acknowledge. And yes, you know what? They can serve a purpose. I choose to use those platforms to share as much as I can the positive information with those who choose to receive. And I
Hmm.
also will, like I did this past weekend, for 72 hours, if not more, I did not go on any of those platforms whatsoever. And it's glorious. It is
Hmm.
glorious. Because just being who I am, something could just pop up and I can feel the psychic attack coming through.
Oh
It's
yeah.
it's staggering how and we're all connected to all of this. Some of us, yes, we're much more sensitive and we're much more acutely attuned into those vibrational frequencies. But good Lord, it amazes me how something could just pop up and I can feel the psychic attack coming through for it, and how it throws me. And I'm very mindful of keeping myself shielded and protected, and still something would find a way to get through. That being said, it doesn't, thankfully, it doesn't have a long-term negative effect on me because I'm so mindful of my spiritual wellness and health and healthcare, if you will, that every
Right.
one of us is supposed to be working with. We're all supposed to know how to keep ourselves psychically and spiritually protected.
It can be challenging at times, as you've
Eh,
seen. It
That's
can
right.
be, and I'm not joking. I say it all the time, especially where I work. The kids are all special needs in one way or another. And I tell them, just a super soaker with holy water. Nobody has to know what's in it. Just
No,
spray it. Let them be happy. Let them be happy, because it just,
the
it's hard some days to be able to keep that protection when
sure.
everything around you is so beating down, like so negative. The environment in general, with this division, it causes this major negativity within the environment, within our spatial area, no matter where
Of
we are,
course.
no matter how much we try to keep it cool, calm, collective, grounded, balanced, and focused. We who do protect ourselves daily, our shields take a major dinging, like major dents. And I'm like, you want to talk about it. And at the end of the day, if you don't want to talk to people, you don't want to look at people, you don't want anything. You just want to maybe sit with a book and open a portal and then close that portal when you're done and ready to go to bed, or work on something that you don't you don't want to be out in the public eye. You don't want to be um you
So
don't
exposed and vulnerable.
exposed and
Vulnerable.
vulnerable.
Or vulnerable. Yes.
Going to New York City for
Oh,
me is one of the worst experiences in my life. I
okay.
cannot do it because the energy is all over the place. And when I get done at the end of the day, I am like I could be crippled, just trying
So
to protect myself. I
sure.
it, you know,
Back then, back in the day, I mean, I used to have to go into New York City quite frequently for radio shows, TV appearances, whatever that might be. I
mhm,
have not. The last time I was in New York City, maybe at the start of 2018 or 2019. I have no desire, and I cannot allow myself to be exposed to the discord that's running rampant in that
mhm,
location. Even, I mean, I live 7 miles west of New York City, so we can feel, I mean, we feel the effects of all of that here,
mhm.
so it is quite challenging to even just be outside of all of that. But we have to be aware to just not allow it to really interfere with our well-being as much as I can. And sometimes it is very much a challenge, especially now. We're
Oh, yeah.
constantly being bombarded. There's cell phone towers everywhere. We can't get away from Wi-Fi. All of this, it's kind of like we're being, microwaved from the inside out.
Mhm, mhm.
And most don't understand the negative effects of all of this. And we do need to periodically be mindful to remove ourselves from interacting with these devices that so many feel that we can live with, but we can't live without.
Correct. Correct. And it is, and it affects nature and wildlife. And
Of
again, I was
course.
on the phone with a girlfriend yesterday, and she said, "Oh my God, I walked out this morning and there was a dead flew right into my window, and it's dead on below the window." And she goes, "And I had markers and stuff on it, and different things to let it know that it was a window and not." She goes, "But it happens frequently." I said, "Honey," I said, "you're talking 5G. You were talking they're working on 7G right now. Forget 6G.
I
They're
know.
working on 7G."
I know, Renee. I
And they've
know.
been working on it for a few years now, and they
Yeah.
know exactly what they're doing.
Of
It's
course they
it's
do. Of
it's
course
and
they do.
it's not advancement in technology. It's not just advancement. It's advancement in technology based out of greed and money.
Yeah.
And not caring that how it's going to affect wildlife or nature or
Humanity.
humans.
Or humanity. Or humanity.
We we complain about flooding. My driveway never used to flood. Never used to flood. The owners of my community came through and decided to put several layers of blacktop down the road and not do the driveways, but here we are. If we want stone, we have to buy it ourselves and put it down. But even though we pay for But
Sure.
keep on putting all this pavement, this blacktop, these buildings, and getting rid of nature, getting rid of the trees instead of working around them, instead of trying to manipulate the land. Work with the land. You're the one coming in and changing things. This is why we have flooding. This is why we are seeing more animals coming out into the urban communities
Sure.
that
Of course.
normally wouldn't be there, is because we are getting rid of nature. We're getting rid of their habitat. But you want to talk about the flooding, you're going to have flooding. The more that you pave, the more that you tar, sinkholes, you're going to be causing sinkholes because it's not natural. I'm not saying horse and buggy yet, but, with the roads and stuff, but there are things to do that can work to better help the environment
Of course. To
than
work
for
with
us to be selfish and take it away.
Yeah, it's kind of like before when we were talking about working with the cycles. Work with the cycles of nature. Work in conjunction with nature and not against it.
Correct. It's so important. So important that we really begin, and I'm trying to work this appropriately, that we begin to consciously step out of the ego and step more into our soul self, our true being,
Mhm.
and see what's going on and make those corrections. The corrections are not the normal cycles of the earth and interfering with that which is being done. It is not. It is not blocking out the sun. You know, it is not chemtrails to
Yeah, of
change the weather, or it is not weather manipulation. That is coming from ego. All that stuff,
course.
and
No,
it
no ego.
exists, and we need to figure out how to correct this so that we don't do more damage to the planet than what's being done
Yeah.
out of greed.
And it all begins with from by going within, and being being the change that we desire to see in the world. It has to first begin with us individually and what
Hmm.
we're generating out into the world. And then by the ripple effects, it will branch out to others. And it needs to begin with us individually first. We need to understand and recognize all that we're casting in motion, all that we are being that may be contributing to the health, wellness, or lack thereof of our planet. It has to start with us individually first before anything else can change. We can't expect a change to occur externally before anything
Correct.
happens. It has to begin with us first.
Correct. Correct. Nope, I totally agree. So,
I always say that if we want to calm the storms in the outside world, we need to calm the storms within ourselves first.
yep, it's so true. So, Ray, what advice would you give people now, in regard to what's going on, and what is it that they truly need to do? What do they need to focus on,
You know,
um,
I've been
with
saying
what's coming?
I've been saying for the longest time, first and foremost, be in a place of gratitude. Direct your attention to all the blessings that are already surrounding you. Be in the moment. Be in that place of love. When we truly are in that place of love, we become that eye in the center of the storm and we observe the chaos going on around us. And it
Correct.
has no negative impact on our wellness and our well being. Choose to be in that place of love. Choose to direct your attention towards all the blessings that are already surrounded you, and then you amplify all the goodness. When we just sit there and we watch the news and we allow ourselves to be assaulted by that negative energy, it's not serving a purpose. And we always need to remember that, you know, just look outside your window. If you're feeling uncertain or unpleasant or unsettled, just look outside your window. Look at nature. Observe nature. How nature, there's one of the teachings that stems from the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu that says, and I'm paraphrasing, it states, nature does nothing and leaves nothing undone. Look how miraculous and how brilliant that statement is. And maybe if we can just allow ourselves to just be for even
Right.
just a few moments a day, remove yourselves from all of that chaos in the outside world, create some peacefulness within yourselves, be dedicated towards that, and observe how much more peaceful you become, and also observe the clarity that comes to you regarding what's happening in our world right now.
Yes, it's very important. And it's good advice. And one last thing before we do close for the evening, and I do want you to come back
I will.
when the energies are a little bit better around me. Um, I I am going to ask you to talk about real quick about your book, how they can get a hold of a copy of your book,
Sure.
and also how they can get in touch with you
Just
for whether it be an astrological reading or to discuss more with you some of your thoughts and your process.
all the information is on my website. The website's astrologerray.com. My book is available on Amazon, where most of us go shopping these days. It is available in bookstores. All the information about private consultations, as well as group private events, as well as corporate events. I also officiate weddings and funerals. All that information is on my website. And again, that's astrologerray.com. You can also sign up to receive my newsletter, to receive the announcements of my forecast, as well as where I will be appearing, whether it's events or on programs like this.
Good, beautiful. Thank you for coming on, Ray.
My pleasure. Thank you for
I'm
having me.
grateful, and I'm glad we were able to work through some of this, no matter how frustrating it was at
All right.
times for
That's
both of
okay.
us when I disappeared and then I came back and the energy shifted a little bit, and I
Sure.
apologize for that.
No. It's all good.
But some days. Anyway, but thank you for coming on, and thank you for being a part of my tribe, and and part of my soul family, and I love you to pieces. And we just have to keep on putting out for the highest good of all, and hope that we do get people to understand it. And it's not that we're asking people to see like we are. We're asking people just to take a break and come from a place of love, and to get their own perception out of ego, of what, and to understand what's coming on outside of ego, outside of going with the crowd and following the Joneses, and doing things from a place of fear, and that's all we're trying to do.
I always say that I'm not here to tell anyone what they should or should not believe. I share what I have come to know, and I just suggest to consider these
Correct.
possibilities.
Correct.
If it serves a greater purpose for you, that's wonderful. If not, that is also magnificent.
I always tell people, granted, we have our life path. We all have our own life path, and I'm not asking you to join my life path, but we can have our life paths walking side by side, even though we might see differently or be a little bit different. Nobody has the same thing, but I mean, we also have free will, and free will doesn't always mean a negative thing. Free will can be a very positive thing if used within the right construct, or um, in the right purpose. Like if you know something isn't bad, are you going to still do it even though you know it's bad for you? You can reroute outcomes, and that's up to us as individuals. It's up to us as um, spiritual beings
Absolutely. Of
to
course.
to be able to change the course of some things, of like the global life path. I mean, that's up to us. We can either fight each other and stay disconnected, in a state of dis-ease, as you would say, dis-ease, or we can come together collectively from a higher place of love, and make the changes that need to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
So thank you so much, Ray. I love you, and
many blessings.
namaste, and just you'll be back, and so
We
we'll
will.
be talking.
All right. right, Renee.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Have a blessed day.
You
Thank you.
too. Thank you.